Bring out the knives and
yeah, knives, and they're shooting at each other, and they're, bloody and kicking each other and all that stuff.
What's up, guys? We're here today with my good buddy Carter Yocham. He's an investor out of Boise, Idaho, focusing on creative finance, which basically means buying properties with none of your own money. And last year, he bought $3 million worth of real estate with none of his own money. And so welcome to the show, bro.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so we met at Ryan Pinez's WealthCon Mastermind last year, and just kind of really cool kind of seeing your journey and just seeing the cool things that you're doing. And just so I guess once you just kind of dive in and just see like how did you get started? What were you doing before real estate investing, and how did you get started in real estate investing?
Totally. It's a very long story, so I'll give you the condensed version for sure.
Sure.
When I was a kid, I got into entrepreneurship.
Okay.
At the like clothing store like Sears.
Okay.
They had these rolls of candy for 12.5 cents.
Okay.
And first that perplexed me, like how do you cut a penny in half? That doesn't make any sense. But you had to buy two.
Because they're 25 cents, right?
Yeah,
so, okay.
So once I figured that out, then I started slinging candy, and that led to.
So you'd buy them for like 25 cents and sell them each for like a little bit more?
$1, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'd buy two rolls of candy for 25 cents, and then I'd sell one roll for $1.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah. What was that? That's technically 86.5%
Okay. Wow.
margin.
Okay.
So, but that led to a whole long list of entrepreneurial journeys that I took. My mother's been in real estate for, at this point, it was like 15 or 16 years whenever I got started in real estate. And I didn't understand that you could make money in real estate, but I met a real estate agent as I was doing what I was trained to do formally, which was video production.
Okay.
And
so you kind of had a career in video production before you got into real estate.
100%. And once I met this gal, her name's Christina Ward. She's with Keller Williams, and she was talking about how she made $1 million.
Wow, as a real estate agent?
As a real estate agent, yeah,
Crazy.
not even an investor.
Okay, so just as a real estate agent, she made $1 million.
Right, in a year.
Wow, yeah.
And that blew my mind. I couldn't believe that.
Because what were you making as a
videographer?
Videographer at the time.
So as a videographer, the most I'd ever made in a year was probably around $65,000.
Okay.
And I tried to run my own agency, and I tried all kinds of other things as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right. But when she told me she made $1 million, I was blown away, because my mom had been a real estate agent for 15 years, and she did not make $1 million in a year. So it kind of broke that worldview for me.
Just like what was possible. You're like, it blew your mind. Like, okay, there's somebody who has a job, or there's a profession where you can actually make $1 million in a year. So.
Yeah, as like the way that I perceived a real estate agent was that it was a job.
Yeah.
I didn't see them as an entrepreneur. I saw it as a job, and so when I heard she could make $1 million, I did everything I could to work for her, because I wanted to learn. And so I applied for jobs, and I did whatever I could to get in front of her and her office people. And I never got a job, but I got to go through the interview process with her. And if you know anything about Keller Williams is a ginormous organization, worldwide organization led by Gary Keller. And Gary Keller is definitely one of the great entrepreneurs of, I would say, the last 20 to 30 years.
Yeah, no, definitely.
He's worth, I think he's worth about $4 or $5 billion at this point.
It's crazy.
And he started out as a real estate agent.
Okay. So another real estate agent who now is a crazy head, or obviously like $4 billion is a lot more than $1 million, but
yeah,
still
it is.
So.
So, and then that's really what got me started. Is I kind of knew about real estate, obviously being around it for most of my younger years.
From your mom.
Yep.
So then once you met the agent who made $1 million in a year, it kind of sparked something in you to kind of actually pursue real estate. And then how did that actually transition into actually real estate investing?
Yeah. I probably didn't understand real estate investing at the time, but fortunately for me, a couple years earlier, I became an investor on accident.
Okay.
And although I wasn't in real estate full time, I had some childhood friends who, in the town that I grew up in, Oklahoma, they were buying homes for anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000.
15,000. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're buying a house for $15,000.
Yeah. And
is it like a porta potty, or like what is it?
It's an actual house.
Okay.
Like 700, 800 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, that kind of thing. In fact, if you guys can go look up this town, Seminole, Oklahoma. That's where I grew up. You can buy houses today. It's January 2024. There are probably 30 houses for sale under $50,000.
Wow. Okay.
Now, it's not the kind of place you want to have tenants.
Okay.
And that's what I found out.
Okay.
So my buddy, they had, I think, 9 rentals, and they were cash flowing something like $1,200 a month from 9 rentals.
So
like,
all together, all 9 together. So each one was like $100 or $200 a month. Okay.
Yep. And again, that was one of those worldviews that kind of blew my mind. And so I was able to, at that time, and this was 4 or 5 years before I became a real estate agent.
Okay.
I bought my first investment.
So this is before you met the $1 million lady.
I didn't even know what I was doing though.
Okay.
And so that's why I like to tell the story backwards, because I did it on accident, really.
Mm-hmm.
I saw something that my friend was doing and I wanted to do it as well.
Okay,
So I bought that $15,000 house and tried to get a renter.
So you bought a house for $15,000 and then you just like, I'm going to rent this thing out for like $600 a month. And then did you find a tenant?
I did.
Okay.
And that was in December of 2019.
Okay.
And we all know what happened in
COVID, right?
March
after
of
that.
2019
Okay.
or 2020 rather. And so they paid December and January, and then from February to July they didn't pay.
Oh wow, okay.
Because of COVID.
Okay, so you bought a house for $15,000. You got a tenant who was paying $600 a month.
Yep.
But then COVID happened, and so now like they're in the house and they're not paying rent.
Right.
Okay.
So these tenants had a car payment that they told me they needed to make.
Okay.
And the car payment was $750 a month, and I was only charging them $600 a month rent.
So the house was cheaper than the car payment.
The house is cheaper, yeah. So whenever they told me that they had to make payments to the car instead of making payments to the house, I asked them to go live in the truck instead because they're paying more for the truck.
Yeah.
And, it was a nice truck, but if they're going to prioritize that way and not pay their rent, at the end of the day, what happened was I had to get a hold of the gentleman's father, and his father helped me kick him out.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, what was that process like? Like in Hawaii, it's kind of strict as far as like tenant landlord laws. How does it work in Boise, Idaho?
So this was in Oklahoma.
Okay.
So,
sorry.
So in Oklahoma, the laws were a little less in favor of the tenant, but remember this was during the shutdown.
Yeah, the COVID times, right?
So during the shutdown, you couldn't do anything, and it was very difficult to get any kind of eviction, especially any kind of help from the municipality or authorities.
Got it. Yeah.
So the only way that I could do it was to go to this man's father.
Okay.
And fortunately, the father sided with me.
Okay.
And got his son to leave.
That was nice of him. So.
Yeah. They didn't leave peacefully though.
What happened?
So, if you guys have seen Mr. and Mrs. Smith, there's part of the movie where Mr. and Mrs. Smith are fighting in their kitchen. Yeah. Or just in the house in general.
Bring out the knives and
knives, and they're shooting at each other, and they're bloody and kicking each other and all this stuff. Part of it though is Mr. Smith rips the gas line and blows up the house essentially. They ripped the gas line in my kitchen and left the gas running for almost 3 weeks, as well as they turned the faucet on in the kitchen and disconnected the P-trap under the sink, which made all the water just go straight under the sink into the cabinet and out onto the floor.
Just flooding the house with gas and water.
Right. And at the time, I lived in Idaho, and so I couldn't get anybody, an inspector, out there to check on the property for 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow.
This was in the middle of July in Oklahoma, where it's humid and hot. And for that period of time, because the water was in there was the most mold in a house I've ever seen all over the house.
Do you have pictures of this thing?
Yeah, I do actually.
You gotta show it to me later.
Yeah, I will. And so we ended up having to bulldoze the house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And my insurance claim, I got a full claim.
Okay.
I got $7,000.
So
because
you got some of your money back. So
I only bought it for $15,000. Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay. So that was kind of like your intro to real estate investing, like being a landlord for the first time. How did you get it started with creative financing?
Yeah. So there's a really good story. I don't cuss.
Okay.
But for this story, I will.
Okay. Let's hear it.
So I was sitting down with a gentleman fairly recently, and he just summed up exactly what I've been trying to do for a very long time. And I told him I said, Dan, that's a really good way to describe that deal. And he said, Carter, I've been trying to pay for shit for a long time. I've been trying to figure out how to pay for shit for a long time. That's exactly what he said. And I was like, you know what, Dan? That's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to figure out how to pay for stuff.
Yeah.
That's all I'm trying to do. And creative finance, I think, I don't recall exactly where I got started, but it was somewhere in high school when I was trying to buy a motorcycle and trying to buy a car.
Okay.
And, and just trying to buy a camera. Like I was always, it's the saying that necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah, yeah.
It's sort of the same here. I wasn't really inventing.
It's kind of cool. Like whenever you have like limitations in something, you figure out a way to kind of overcome that and get it done with that limitation, right? So it sounds like you're trying to buy either like a motorcycle or a camera with no money, right? So like I guess your limitation is having no money, but you want the camera or the bike, but you don't have money. So how can you do it, right?
And most people would stop because they realize that money is what gets you the thing. But I was very fortunate. I think my mother really and my grandfather kind of bred this into us.
Okay.
They were always deal makers.
Okay.
For whatever.
Okay.
My mom was a real estate agent, and for my first car, she sold a house, and in exchange for her commission money, someone gave her a car.
Wow. Okay.
And so like it was normal.
Almost like a service for like a good or something like that.
Yeah.
So
it was normal to me to not only rely on traditional financing or typical financing methods. So there was always, and I think that happens, honestly, I've noticed this. I think that happens in poor communities.
Yeah.
Because not everyone has money.
Yeah.
But everyone has needs still.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so as I've done a lot more deals over the past couple of years, I've actually found that rural communities understand owner finance and seller finance a lot more than people who are urbanized.
I see. That's very interesting. So I guess like they don't have as many options. So they like you said, like they find a way to figure it out without money.
Yep.
And then that just becomes part of like the culture or the landscape at that point in time.
Right. Yeah. So as an interesting aside to that point, I bought a property this year that was 18 acres, had 2 homes on it.
Okay.
Out in the country.
Okay.
10 to 12 acres of the property was set in hay.
Okay.
Like hay for cows.
Okay.
So, agriculture.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When I bought it and the seller received the first funds, they reached out to me and they said, hey, if you want to make your payments instead of $2,000 a month, if you just want to pay us one time in November or December, $24,000 after harvest, that's fine. And I didn't suggest that.
Yeah, yeah.
They did. The owners of this, small farm suggested that because they understood if someone was going to come farm that property, they would make their money in September, October, November, and then that's when they would have the money to be able to pay.
So they're kind of working around like the agriculture or like the farmland kind of like community.
Yeah. But that's just a creative way to come up with something. They were willing to, I put a 10% down payment, but they were willing to forego payments for almost a full 12 months.
Which saves you interest and things on your side too, right? Makes
Absolutely. Yeah, so I found in rural communities, they really understand that creative finance stuff. So, which is where I grew up.
Okay.
And so I think that the creative finance was sort of bred into me by my community.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a poor community, and it was always this goods for services or good for good or skill for skill trade versus good for money or a service for money.
That's really interesting. And just the way that you put it, I think it makes a lot of sense. Like, just because because rich people, they just they rely on just their money to just basically do everything, right? But like when you don't have it, now you're like, okay, like what else can I do? Let's borrow, let's trade, let's try and negotiate or figure this thing out because you have something that I want, and what do I have that I can give you that would actually help be something that you want in exchange for it, right? So
absolutely, yeah. So that honestly, I don't think there was any one thing that got me started on the creative finance path, but just being in that environment growing up allowed me to understand that there's a lot of different ways to do.
So even going into real estate from the very beginning, you realize that you don't always have to pay cash for a property. There's other ways to acquire it, and so. But there's it seems very complex. There's so many different ways to go about it. How did you learn how to the different kinds of options? So
yeah. So I think that's another thing that really comes from the reps, right?
Okay.
You just do the reps.
Okay.
The more I got around people, for instance, the more I got around people who made more money, the more I understood that there's more money to be made.
Yeah, yeah.
The more I got around people who were really fit athletically and were able to sustain it for 10 years, or a long period of time, the more I understood that you could be really fit and sustain it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So whenever it came to creative finance deals, I always knew that I could do creative finance deals because I'm sort of a bulldog when it comes to like if there's something I want to do, I go and do it.
Okay.
And money or circumstance or situation won't get in the way of that. So I always honed that skill. But getting to a point where I understood all the different avenues that you can go down.
Yeah, for creative finance.
For creative finance and how to structure a deal. That just came from putting the reps in.
I see.
Because like I mentioned about the farmer who sold me the 18 acres, it was his idea to have me pay him one lump sum. No one, I hadn't ever suggested that to anyone else, and no one had suggested that to me before.
So it's almost like you learned something new from that deal, or like when he made that suggestion.
Yeah. So everybody in these deals comes with something. And I think that part of negotiation in sales is being a good listener.
Yeah, definitely.
And so listening to things, Pace Morby talks about finding the bunnies.
Yeah.
If you've heard that story.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard that story, you can go look for that online and find that. But it's funny that he has the story about looking for bunnies. I call it finding the money bunnies.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of money bunnies in everybody's story. And if you're willing to listen, especially to the sellers that you're working with, if you want to acquire real estate, if you're willing to listen, you can find those money bunnies, or you can see them running around, and it's pretty easy. Like, hey, I can help you with that. I can help you with this.
So I mean, like you acquired $3 million worth of real estate this year with none of your own money.
Yep.
How did you do that?
So the first thing I did was I lied to a lot of people. I'm just kidding. No. The reason I wanted to say that was because if you lie, or if you don't know what you're doing, or if you don't tell people the truth, that's where you get yourself in a lot of trouble with these deals. And so the first thing that I did was
What do you mean by that? Like that? Is it like from experience, or you seen other people do it, or what happened?
Yeah. So let me go back and sort of frame the situation. So I bought $3 million in real estate this year with none of my own money.
Okay.
And I didn't do it by lying and cheating and stealing.
Okay.
So it's not a scam.
Yeah.
But it does start with trust. And if you listen to people talk about investing in deals, let's say they have a large sum of money and they want to invest in a deal. A lot of times they like the return. They like the idea of the deal. But what do they like more than that? They like the fact that they trust the guy who's doing the deal.
Yeah, that's really important. I think like a lot of people, they underestimate it. So like I get deals pitched to me, or I see other investors pitch deals to people who have money, and they're like, hey, you can make like 10% returns, you can make like 15% returns, and they focus on the returns that the investor would make, but they don't realize that like the investor doesn't trust like they're even gonna get back their money, their original money, right? So like being able to trust the operator, the person who's going to be handling your money, is way more important than just the actual returns itself, right? It's not always just like a math equation.
Absolutely, yeah. And any kind of sales guy is going to tell you, like, if I'm trying to sell you a fitness program, I'm not, this is the Alex Hormozy thing. I'm not going to sell you like, hey, you're going to have to get up at 6, which I know you won't like. You're going to have to do a bunch of really hard things, and you're going to sweat and smell bad and be really sore, and then you're going to be fit. Do you want to buy my program? And everyone's like, of course not.
Yeah.
The program that you're selling is, hey, you're going to lose 10 pounds and you're going to feel great.
You're selling the benefits and like kind of like the dream outcome, or the picture that they want to achieve. 100%. Right? So.
Absolutely. So if you go into a deal and you're trying to garner this trust with, hey, I'm going to get 15% return, and my GC is the best guy in the business, and he's going to do this work, and we're going to use this tile and all that stuff. Most of the time, people don't really care about all that stuff. They want to know, like, hey, at the end of this deal, we're going to have a beautiful project. I've done it before.
So track record, right?
Yep.
So,
yeah, we're going to have a beautiful project. I've done it before, and you're going to have the return, which is your dream outcome, on this money. And that's really all people need to know. So that $3 million of real estate that we were able to purchase this year really started with trust. And the reason I say that starts with trust is because the key component to I bought $3 million of real estate is I bought $3 million of real estate with none of my money.
Yeah.
The none of my money part is where the trust starts. If I had the money, sure, I could have bought $3 million, but I didn't have the cash in my bank to go buy $3 million of real estate. Other people did.
Okay.
When I want to leverage their money, I have to have that trust component, and that trust component is 100% the most important thing in a deal. And the second most important thing is finding a good deal.
Yeah.
So finding the good deal is something that I really like to specialize in, and I really like to teach people. The way that I say it is, I will teach you how to find, negotiate, and close a creative finance deal on Zillow.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
Right? So, and that's what I did with all of these properties. I found them on Zillow. They had been listed. Everyone and their grandma who scrolls Zillow whenever they're sitting in front of the TV at night and they, were bored or whatever, they saw those deals too. But what they weren't able to see were the money bunnies running around on that listing that indicated this is a good opportunity for creative finance. And so because I'm able to see, or because I've done, I've looked at thousands and thousands and thousands of deals, I've called hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sellers and agents just on Zillow. I've been able to acquire the skill that I can see when these indicating markers are on a listing, and then I can make a deal.
That's really interesting. So you go on Zillow, you look at a property that maybe has been listed or has been on the market for like a little bit of while, and there's something about that property that can tell you that this guy is motivated to not just take cash for his property. And then you call the seller or call the agent, and you kind of work out a deal where you can actually acquire the property not using your own money. So
right, absolutely. So I'll tell you about a couple of the deals that we did this year.
Sure, yeah.
So one of the deals that we did was a 10-acre property up in North Idaho.
Okay.
It was listed for $1.3 million.
Okay.
Way overpriced.
Okay.
A piece of
What
land.
do you think it was probably worth, like, on the market?
At the time, probably $900,000, $950,000. Okay. So it's overpriced over $250,000.
Okay.
What I can do with creative finance, however, is I can understand that $250,000 can be applied in a different place than just on the purchase price.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, when you have the purchase price of a property, it maybe makes up this much space.
Okay.
That purchase price is not everything that you're going to pay for that property, right? If you go get a loan, you're also paying this extra chunk over here in interest.
Fees and interest.
Fees, everything. All of this over here. Okay, so even though there's a divider line right here, which there's the purchase of the property on this side, and these are the fees and the interest on this side, I'm actually paying for this whole big thing right here.
Yeah. Okay.
And so if I can step back and realize, as a creative finance opportunity, I'm paying this much anyway. Interest, fees, all that stuff. How can I pay for that in a creative way is what I'm looking to do.
Okay.
So instead of me going to get a loan for this much, right, and I pay off the property and I buy it, and then I pay the fees later, is there a way for me to wrap that all into one thing and then make the terms work out in my favor?
Okay.
Right?
So what would you pitch the seller? What did you pitch the seller in this situation?
Yeah, so this particular property, it was obvious to me, and I can kind of paint the picture here for you. So it's this beautiful 10 acres in North Idaho. Okay, there's an airport, Coeur d'Alene Airport, and there's a lake.
Okay.
They're about 10 miles from each other.
Okay.
This property is right in the middle. So if someone has a private jet, and this is the kind of area it's in too, if someone had a private jet and they really liked the lake, they could have this 10 acres and it would be a beautiful spot. However, there was a super old, decrepit home that needed to be torn down on the property.
Okay.
It had been vacant for almost 2 years, on the market for almost 2 years, never dropped the price one time.
The $1.3 million property with like the vacant house.
Yep.
Okay.
For 2 years. When I look at that, it's really easy for me to say, okay, someone obviously values this property very, very high.
Yeah.
Over market.
Yeah. Because if to sit that long means it's guaranteed overpriced, right? So
right. Yeah. And the other thing is, when people overprice items and they don't want the money, they're more interested in getting the value, the perceived value of that item, than they are interested in getting money.
Okay.
And so the perceived value of this property to the seller was 1.3.
Yeah,
they didn't care about having $1 million in their pocket.
Yeah.
They cared about this place selling for $1.3 million.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Right? So that $1.3 million to them, the overinflated price was memories and sentimental value. Right?
So like they're valuing like their emotional attachment or sentimental value as part of the equation for their price of why they're selling it.
Right.
Saying, so.
And how else are you supposed to value that stuff? You know, you can't just throw it away. So I found out through that and looking at the property, old decrepit house, you know, zero updates in the past whenever the property hasn't been taken care of, all that stuff. It was pretty easy for me to see that it's probably a family or a family member who grew up here. You know, come to find out, what it was this was the mother's home that all the kids grew up in.
Okay.
Mother had passed away a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And the daughter who was in charge of the estate had very high sentimental value placed on this property because that's where her and her siblings all grew up.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's why it was overpriced. They were willing to, this is crazy, these folks were willing to wait for the market to appreciate
up to the 1.3.
To 1.3.
Whether it took like 20 years or 30 years.
They didn't care, right?
They just wanted that 1.3 number. So
why was it 1.3? I have no clue. Maybe 13 was their mother's lucky number or something like that. I don't know. But like doing the math, that obviously doesn't make any sense. To wait for a property to appreciate to the value that you place on it, number wise, right? Because everything else is going to be inflated. The value of that dollar is going to be down. It makes no difference. You sell it for today's price or you sell it for tomorrow's price, it's the same. So what we're able to do to work out for that property is we put 20% down. And so we put
$260,000.
$260,000 down, exactly, in cash. Not my cash, but we put $260,000 down. And because of the type of work we want to perform on that property, we were able to negotiate no payments and no interest for 3 years. So I put $260 down. We acquired the property, and then I have no payments and no interest for 3 years. Now, going back to this image here where we have the purchase price and then we have this separate section that's interest. Now it makes sense because I can have a 3-year period where I'm paying for everything, interest and all, interest and fees and everything. I have a 3-year period where I don't have to make any payments, no interest, and that makes up this gap that I would have otherwise needed to come off the purchase price if I didn't do it creatively. But because I did it creatively, I'm able to just tack that on to the end because I'm foregoing all these interest and fees, getting a conventional loan.
So where did you come up with that 260 cash?
So going back to trust, the 260,000 came from private money lenders. And these private money lenders are people like you and I who have come to these conventions or meet in whatever capacity. And they trusted that this deal was going to be something that I could perform on. Also, private money lenders, just as a tip for people who want to get into this, private money lenders get really excited about creative finance deals.
Like, why is that?
I don't know. It's a lot easier for me to pitch a creative finance deal than a typical like, hey, I'm going to give you 12% return and I'm going to go get this loan. They're like, I don't really like that. You know, I tend to find the same way that this lady valued her property really high because of sentimental value. It has to do with a story.
So are the lenders getting equity or how are they getting like compensated?
No. So the private money lender for that particular property, they took 1%. So we gave them, I believe on that one, we gave them around 16 or 18% interest.
So they're getting is it monthly or interest at the end of the project?
At the end of the project. Yep. So they're getting simple interest.
16 annualized or just overall?
16% annualized. It's either 16 or 18%. I don't recall the numbers, but it's a high number.
You know,
for
very
typical
good interest.
But because I have the no payments for 3 years and no interest on that money either. You know, because you have to remember, we put $260,000 down. So
it's almost like you get a loan from the sellers for like $1 million at points.
Exactly.
So,
we have over $1 million loan with the seller, and they're basically giving us $1 million and saying, here, you can have it for 3 years. No interest.
So what do you guys plan to do with the property, or how are you going to monetize this?
That one is going to be a luxury build. So we're going to build a luxury home on it and flip it. So that one's a really big project.
How are you going to pay for like the construction and all that kind of stuff?
So that part, we are going to use a hard money lender. Yep.
So you buy the house with like a private money lender to put the 260 down.
Yep.
And then you're going to get a hard money loan for the renovation. And then the seller is going to be carrying back like their balance of like the 1.3 purchase price.
Yep.
What do you think it's going to cost for the luxury build?
So we'll be all in around 3.8. So we have a $1.3 million purchase price. We have a $2.5 million build.
That's a big build.
It is a big build.
So you're gonna build a $2.5 million mansion, basically like luxury mansion on this
Exactly.
thing.
Yep. And then sale price should be somewhere between 5.1 and 5.5.
What do you guys think you're gonna make after all stuff?
After all fees and paying everybody, we should bring home somewhere between $800,000 and 1.2. In about 2.5 years.
That's a healthy margin for 2.5 years.
Yeah. So it's that the way that we were able to structure that deal just got a lot of people excited.
Yeah. Seems it's very, very, very creative.
Yeah, and that's the point with creative finance too. Like, creative finance doesn't only mean going and getting owner finance. It just means coming up with an interesting way.
You're trying to structure a different way to like just make things happen, right? So
yeah.
So it's kind of like you did like almost like a combination of conventional with the hard money, but also creative finance on the side. So it's like kind of like merge to create this like this one deal or masterpiece where you're kind of mixing the different kind of tools you have in your tool belt.
Yeah. And that's exactly the point too, is like having more tools in your tool belt. You don't have to, and I tell people this all the time who want to get into wholesaling or flipping or whatever. Whenever you're wholesaling deals, whenever you're wholesaling real estate, you have to consume a large volume of properties to find the one. My mother's been in real estate and Zillow is one of the easiest platforms that you can use to find real estate deals. You don't have to call thousands of people on a list that you buy. You don't have to door knock. You can just get on Zillow. The biggest benefit to Zillow is you already know the house is for sale.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really undersold point. I think when you try to buy properties off market, like you cold call a bunch of people or text them. For people who they haven't raised their hand saying they want to sell yet, so your first filter of like, do they even want to sell? You have to like talk to like 100 people to find someone who just even wants to sell, right? But Zillow, every single person on that website, they've already raised their hand saying, I want to at least sell my property, right?
Yeah. So, and that's where you get to breaking down like the sales cycle in general. If people don't know who you are, that's cold. Cold traffic. If people know who you are, that's medium. You know, they kind of know what you are. If they're hot traffic, they know who you are and what you have to sell, and they want it. Right? So there's like these 3 different levels of people who know what you have. For us, our game and what we're trying to do in buying this real estate, we know it's already medium traffic because they've already identified that they want the product. Right?
They want to sell, you mean?
They want to sell, and the product is us buying it. So they put it for sale, and just like you said, they raise their hand. They say, "Yes, we want to sell our house." We skip the step of having to tell them what we do and who we are, and convincing them that they want to sell their house.
I mean, but if you're to like cold call somebody, like you're just like around them.
So we skip that step and we just make it easier on ourselves. Yes, it does shrink the pool, right? Obviously, there's not as many houses for sale as there are houses to call on. But we made it that much easier for ourselves to find these deals. So on Zillow, you're doing the same exact thing. And that's why it's nice to set some parameters, because if you just look at the houses for sale in the state
like
of Louisiana, like that's just too much. So you narrow it down. You find out what your 1998 Dodge Cummins is. You know, in my case, what I like to look for a lot is properties that are 1 acre or more in a developing area.
And this is from like looking through like your subconscious and constantly looking through Zillow to kind of figure out what's your buy box or what's your Dodge Cummins for like the properties that you're trying to purchase.
Exactly. Yep. So I've narrowed that down to exactly what I'm trying to purchase. You know, a lot of people starting in real estate or a lot of people who are advanced in real estate investing would suggest people start with like the median home. Right? Like a 3-bed, 2-bath, 2,000 square foot median home price in whatever location. So that's what you put in. And then you scroll through those deals. And then you do it the next day. And then you do it the next day. And you do it the next day. And that's interesting. This one is priced $50,000 more than all the other ones.
That
doesn't make any sense. All the other ones are $300. This one's $350. And then you look at it. Oh, they have an ADU in the back.
I had like there's like really, I think a really good analogy somebody once told me was like, if you go to the grocery store and you see eggs for sale, how do you know if that's a good deal or not? And the reason is like, it's like, okay, so if like it's your first time to the store, like, and you see eggs, like, I need to buy eggs, it's $5. Is this a good deal or not? But if you go to like, let's say a mom who goes shopping all the time, right? So she's in the grocery store every day or every week shopping. She's bought a lot of eggs. She's seen the price over and over the course of the year. When eggs hits $5, she's either like, oh my gosh, that's so expensive, or she's like, oh my gosh, that's so cheap, depending on what she's seen throughout the rest of the year, right? So that rest of the year of just visiting the grocery store over and over sounds like what you're doing with Zillow, where every day you're scrolling, you're looking at 20 properties. If you can look at 100, even better, right? The more properties you can kind of just get into your data, your system, then eventually when you see those eggs for $5, you're like, oh, okay, this is a deal. Let's pursue this further and just kind of get that rep in. But even after you find that first deals, you can run into other problems where like actually it's damaged or these other kinds of things. So you have to actually put in the reps to contact the sellers, talk to them, and kind of go through that process of actually making offers, because then now there's this whole other set of like filters or problems you're gonna kind of run across as well too, right? So
and I definitely think it's all the same skill. It's just a different category. You know, so like the eggs example, that's an awesome example. I haven't heard that before, but it's the same thing. It's like my father-in-law. If he walks into a house and the door creaks, he hears it. And
because what he trained his subconscious to
because he's trained
for,
exactly. He's trained his subconscious to pick up that anomaly, right? It's an anomaly in the house, like the door squeaks. Okay, I'm gonna go get WD-40.
Yeah.
So he goes and gets WD-40 or tightens the screw or whatever. Like, whereas a lot of people, they can live 2 years with this door every single time.
They don't even hear it.
They don't hear it, because they're not paying attention to it, you know. But it's the same skill, and I think everybody in life, like everyone has that skill, whatever it is. They have this skill, and it's this guy's always late to work. I always know that Johnny, like he's always going to be late, like by at least 3 minutes. So like I just noticed that. Okay. Or this person, every time we go to this restaurant, they throw out their onions. Like they've never told you they don't like onions, but you observe it. And so you know that they don't want it.
The thing is, like, so this is like a common skill that we all have and we all use daily, but we don't might not realize it. But the thing is, like, if you can take that skill and apply it to like the biggest money making vehicle, so like when you're flipping, like, let's say candy, you make like $1 or like 80 cents, right? When you're flipping, let's say cars, you make like $2 grand, $3 grand, $4 grand, $5 grand. When you apply that same like anomaly scale to houses, now you can make $40, $50, $100,000. So it's the same like general skill that you're using or applying. It's just applying to like a bigger opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking about this the other day, which is something I want to bring up. When you want to take these skills and apply them to real estate, cars, candy, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Normalizing big numbers is probably going to be one of the things that you do that levels you up the most.
Okay.
And what I mean by normalizing big numbers is if I want to make $40,000 in one transaction, that's the key. Like if I want to make $40,000 in one transaction, if I said that to an average American who has a $56,000 income, that's the average income for an American. It won't make any sense. It won't compute. Because
how can you make $40,000 from one transaction when it takes me a whole year to make $50,000?
Exactly. Like it just doesn't make any sense. But the more you get around these things, like I'm sure you've heard this story about the 4-minute mile. Have you heard that story?
Yeah.
Okay, so this guy was trying to run a 4-minute mile forever. He couldn't sub 4. He couldn't get sub
breaking
sub 4
the 4-minute mile for the barrier. So everybody was
right. This guy was trying to do it for 2 years, and then all of a sudden, a college student from across the world was able to do it in 2 seconds less than 4 minutes. And then 2 weeks later, the same guy that had been trying for 2 years did the same thing. And it's not because he finally got to the place where he could train. It's because someone broke his worldview and he finally believed that
it's like
it could happen.
Mental block that you don't even know you have.
Right.
Yeah,
so normalizing big numbers is something that I think is really important, especially for people who do want to get into real estate investing. It doesn't matter if you're doing creative finance or not. Normalizing big numbers helps you do big numbers because it's normal. And in fact, there's an interesting study where children, so in America, children who are able to jump classes, right? Let's say you're born in a like low middle class.
Okay.
But in your lifetime, you're able to jump to like high class.
Okay.
And you're living rich. Top 1%.
Okay.
Children who are able to jump classes the easiest are children who come from church.
Why is that?
And the reason is when kids go to church, church is a place where people from all classes gather together. And so these kids from low middle class, high class societies,
they're all in the same room together.
They're all in the same room, and they all do life together at church. And so this study put out that the best chance for children to jump classes, in particular go up, obviously, is to do life at church. Because they normalize big numbers and they normalize nice life and they normalize, typically
just
education.
To summarize, it's basically like let's say you had a kid that's like lives in like his household makes like let's say $10,000 a year. You got another kid that makes let's say like $50,000 a year. You got another kid whose parents make like let's say $100,000 a year, and so they all go to the same church. Normally, if they stayed in their same communities, the $10,000 a year kids would all hang out together, and then all their kids would make $10,000. the 50,000 a year kids would all hang out together, and all their kids would make 50,000. The 100,000 kids, same thing.
Yep.
But then when you get all the kids going together in the same church, that the 100,000, the 50,000, and the $10,000 a year kids all are in the same room together.
Yep.
Then the 10,000, that's the biggest chance for the $10,000 kids to get to the $100,000 community or marks.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. And the study indicates that the reason is because they normalize that.
Yeah, yeah.
The kids normalize the opportunity that the kids at the $100,000 mark have.
I mean, that I feel like that applies in so many different areas of life, you know? So, like, if you are not a smoker, then you hang out with all the friends who are smokers, you're going to be smoking. If, like, let's say, like, you're a big drinker at your old school, then you go to, like, the place where none of your guys are drinking, they're like, okay, you're going to maybe stop drinking. And so, like, there's negative and positive peer pressure, I think. Totally. And so it's such a, like, a weird phenomenon for humans where we just try to normalize, or it was like, there's like a word for that where like you're like homeostasis to your environment, right?
Yeah.
So then like if all your friends are like, let's say they're really successful business wise, you're either gonna like homeostasis to become just as successful as them, or you're gonna drop out of the friend group, I feel like. And so it's almost like whether it's lifting weights or whether it's business or whether it's like your religion, it's just, you get around the people who are doing things where you want to be, and almost like by proximity or like osmosis or some kind of natural law of the universe, like you're just gonna like your body's gonna either naturally just become or kind of like acclimate to whatever it is over there, right? So
it's because it's uncomfortable to be out of alignment, right? Like you go to the chiropractor because you want to be in alignment.
Yeah.
You go to the doctor because your body's all out of whack. You know, whatever. It's the same thing in your environment, like you're talking about. The homeostasis is we want to be in alignment. With our group, and we do this. You know, it's like a floating pool, and then all of a sudden, boop, we come here. If we hang there too long, and so we don't want to hang with, we don't want to hang with this crowd. We want to hang with this crowd because what we're trying to do is we're trying to go up there, and that's something that I found really interesting, and something that I would like to share tactically with everybody.
Okay,
is normalizing big numbers comes from looking at big numbers.
Explain that.
So, if you want to normalize big numbers, go to ZILLOW.com and look at all the houses for sale in Beverly Hills, California that have at least 1 acre. That's all.
What is that? And what are these numbers going to be?
when you go search for that on ZILLOW.com, you're going to see 40 plus houses for sale. Every single one of them over $10 million. So
you're just looking at houses that are over $10 million, and your brain's kind of just absorbing this information to where the point where just houses just cost $10 million, and that's kind of like in your psyche. So.
It'll blow your mind for a while, but eventually you'll look at it and go, oh yeah, I expect that would be $20 million. I expect that house to be $40 million, whatever. And when you normalize those big numbers, you can go back to your market. You know, it's like you're resetting. You're resetting your your bar or whatever it is. You go back to your market and you look at a property and you go, oh, it's
only 500,000.
500,000. You know, like, and then 500,000 is like, that's still a lot of money. But when we normalize these big numbers, it's easier for us to go to like, you go to a private money lender. Say, hey, I just need 500 grand. I need 100 for renovations, and then we're going to sell it for 750.
You know what's funny is I actually do this like the same trick, but it's for problems. So like when sometimes I have this problem, like let's say in my business, where I'm like, okay, we could lose like $100,000. This is terrible. My life is over, right? And then like I think like, oh, actually, like if you think about like Ryan Pineda, every day he's got like $1 million problems where like he could lose like $10 million, right, with his decision. And so for him, he's like, you lost $100,000? What's the big deal? Like, you know, and so I was like, if I was Ryan Pineda, like this would not be a problem. I could easily solve this, and it wouldn't stress me out as much, right? But and if you're like, let's say Elon Musk, like you lose $1 billion in a day with Twitter going down or whatever, right? So like,
which
he's got
done.
$1 billion problems, right? So if you tell Elon Musk, dude, I lost $100,000, or I could lose 100, he'd be like, who are you talking to, right? And so just imagine myself like these problems that these big guys are solving or having to face. Then I think about my problem in that perspective. It's just, okay, it's not that big. You can figure it out. Like it's solvable, and it's like not that as big as you make it inside your own mind, you know. So
I think one of the best things that I did to be able to overcome issues is normalizing big numbers, and then realizing, okay, once those are normalized, and I'm confident in realizing I can actually go make a $40,000 check in one transaction. that's whenever I was able to really apply the tactical stuff. You can learn all the tactical stuff every day, but unless you understand and normalize the big numbers, you're not going to do big numbers, right? So if it's all right, I'd like to share with everybody like the tactic,
please,
the tactical stuff, how I find, negotiate, and close.
Okay, please,
from Zillow. So I'm just going to give you guys like a step-by-step exactly how I do it, so that way you guys can apply it. So the stuff that we talked about before about normalizing the big numbers, that's really important to do before, it's kind of like
before you do this. That's kind of like the pregame. So
yeah, exactly.
Get your head right so that you're able to kind of take the action on these steps.
Yeah, and you don't let things like money trip you up, because money is everywhere, as you can see if you go to Beverly Hills on Zillow and look for these homes. So don't worry about that part. The part is finding the anomalies and making a good deal. So go to Zillow.com. Doesn't matter where you are in the country or the world. Go to Zillow.com, or your preferred. It can be Realtor.com, Trulia, whatever syndicate platform where you can see all the homes that are for sale right now.
Got it.
Loop.net. If you're doing commercial, right? It doesn't matter. It's all the same. So you go to Zillow. You figure out what kind of property you want to purchase. For me, if you're brand new, I would suggest to find the median home value in your area, which is probably pretty easy to search on Google, and then a normal first-time homebuyer house, a three bed, 2 bath, 2,000 square feet, 1,500 square feet, something like that. Okay, you put those parameters in, and all you're gonna do for the first week is just look. You're just gonna scroll, and you're gonna look at some houses, and you're gonna look through the bedrooms. Okay, then go to the next one. You're gonna look. You're gonna look. After a week, you're probably gonna look at a couple hundred homes. Okay. Once you look at a couple hundred, you're gonna be surprised, but you're gonna be able to start. At some point, you're going to stop on accident almost. Like your subconscious catches it before your mind, before your conscious does. You're going to stop and look at it, and you're not going to know why, but you have to look at it because your subconscious is telling you there's something different about this particular house listing. When you find that house listing, and I'm going to talk about creative finance, like how to find a deal with creative finance, what you're wanting to look for in particular, as you're looking at these homes, any house that's been listed for 30 to 40 days or more is a good candidate for owner finance. To make it even more of a good candidate, you're going to want to find a house that's vacant. Okay. So it's been listed for a while. That means that they've wanted to sell it for quite some time, and it's not selling. And if it's vacant, you know that the sellers are on one of the two extremes. Either they had to move and they're desperate to sell it because of a job or a family situation, or they want to sell it. It's more of a want versus a need. They want to sell it, and they're an investor, and they can afford to not have someone live there and just have it vacant. Okay, so the first one is 30 to 40 days on market. Okay, you're scrolling, you're looking at if it's vacant or not. Another good way to know if it's vacant, if it's staged, is to just look in the closets. Like if there's pictures of the closet, if there's clothes in there, then they probably live there. If they don't, they probably don't live there if there's no clothes. Another one is look in the description. A lot of times people don't look and read the description. If it's an interesting one, read the description to see if you can pick up some kind of anomaly that might trigger you.
The agent will say why they're selling too. So
right. Yeah. Sometimes they will literally just say seller carry option. Owner will consider carrying note. It might not always be like hyper obvious, but read the description and come up with that. And the conversation you want to have with the agent when you call them, because remember, all these houses are listed for sale. So you're going to be dealing with a real estate agent. If you're not a real estate agent yourself, you're going to call the agent. You're going to say, "Hi, my name's Carter. I'm calling about your listing at 123 Main Street. I'd like to buy it. I'm curious if your sellers have considered creative finance." And they'll probably, very likely they're going to go, "Well, who are you? Are you an agent? What do you want? Are you an investor?" So most likely they're gonna start to ask you like, "Who are you?" and why are you calling? You can tell them at that time, "I'm a buyer. I don't have a real estate agent. I'd like you to represent me." And then you restate the question: "Have you considered creative finance?" And what you're doing, if you're not a real estate agent, what you're doing there is you're telling them that they're going to get double commission, and you need their help, and you're making them the expert, right? Because you're saying, "I need your help. Have you considered creative finance?" Creative finance means a lot of things to a lot of people. And if they say, "What are you talking about?" what I would suggest is owner finance. You go after owner finance first, right? You say, "Well, in the case that your people own it outright, do you think that they would sell it to me owner finance. People typically understand that, especially real estate agent.
Yeah.
If they don't, maybe you should work with someone else. But in the case that these people, they come back and they say, no, they have a loan on the property. You say, oh, that's interesting. Is that loan a loan that they would give to me if it has reasonable terms? Would your sellers consider giving me the loan or leaving the loan attached to the house? There's a lot of different ways to say it, but that's another way to do sub 2 or assuming a loan if you're in a position to be able to assume a loan. That conversation that you have up front, hi, I'm interested in your property. Have your sellers consider creative finance? If they own it outright, could they take owner finance? Or if they don't own it outright, would they give me the loan with the house? Okay, after you have that conversation and come to any kind of conclusion, from there, it's just very basic conversation. Okay, yes, they will. Awesome.
Then you're just going to get the ball rolling forward.
Get the ball rolling, and then you do the transaction.
The big thing is just number one, scrolling, finding the anomaly, and then just making the phone call and just asking if they'll consider creative finance, right? So
yep. And here's the thing. After you scroll for a week and you start to find the anomalies, guess what? There's anomalies inside of they're hiding.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to practice, after you've practiced finding good deals, then just start to call on every single deal,
and just see what's up
and just see,
get your calling reps in,
and then practice calling.
Right? So,
exactly. Yeah. So tactically, I think that's the best thing someone could do right now, because that
just
doesn't cost any money.
If they want to, like they want to get started in real estate investing.
Download Zillow for free.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, if they want to get started in real estate investing, this is like the simple blueprint that you kind of laid out for them to just kind of get their feet wet, get started in. They can actually do deals already at this point with just the simple steps that you've given them.
Right. And if I'm sure people are watching you, or just like in general understand real estate, if you don't want to buy the home yourself, or if you don't understand how to buy the home yourself, guess what? If you find a deal that's creative finance and has really good terms, someone in the real estate investing community will buy that from you for an assignment fee. And you'll become a wholesaler, and then you will make 5, 10, 15 grand from assigning that deal, all because you learned how to scroll on Zillow and talk to a seller.
Love it. Yeah. No, I mean, that's great advice. I think like people at home can actually take what you're learning and just apply it immediately. I think that's it just from your couch when you're watching TV, as opposed to watching Netflix, just get in your phone and just start looking through houses on Zillow, right? Just a lot more productive, or kind of get your foot wet into the world of real estate investing.
Totally. Yeah, and there's a million things that we could get into. If you work with one agent and that one agent likes what you do, then they're going to start sending you referrals. And that's how you build your business, and all it takes is just getting good at that one thing, which is finding those deals.
Awesome, man. Well, just super appreciate having you on the podcast. Like, wealth of knowledge. If people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so on Instagram and YouTube and every other platform, it's just Carter Yocham.
Can you spell that? We'll have it. We'll link it down in the show notes.
Cool. So it's just at Carter Yocham.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, man.